In this lesson, you are going to learn how to connect a simple Java program to MySQL database using Apache Netbeans IDE. Let's imagine that you have a simple Java application or a simple Java program, also called as a JDBC program, which connects to a database server. Database server could be anything like MySQL, Oracle, DB2. It could be any vendor. By connecting to database, we can do anything that we want using SQL statements. For an example, you can insert values to the database table and we can extract the data from the database table to the Java application. And by accessing those values, we can do whatever we want inside the application. This is what we are going to do. But Java application is from a different software, and a database server, for an example like MySQL or Oracle, is different things. It means that what I meant to tell you is that there are two different things here. One is Java application and the other is database server. Two different things has to be connected. There should be an important program called as driver, which establishes connection between Java application and database. And basically the drivers are provided by database vendors. For an example, if you are using MySQL, then you need to download MySQL driver. In case if you are using Oracle, then Oracle will provide its own driver that you need to download it separately. These are the available types of drivers. The oldest one and the first one is type 1, JDBC, ODBC. JDBC means Java Database Connectivity, ODBC, Open Database Connectivity Bridge. It was the oldest one and it was very slow. And the next one which came to the existence is type 2, which is partially written using Java. I say it has partially written in Java because to develop this driver, Java native methods are used. Java native methods means those methods are not basically from Java programming language. Some other programming languages are used. That's why it is called as partial Java. But anyhow, type 2 is slightly better than type 1 in terms of performance. Type 2 is better than type 1. We have type 3 next, which is written purely in Java for connecting the database middleware, and it really played a very good role. And later type 4 came into the existence, which is very powerful, which is in use nowadays. Type 4, which is written entirely in Java, and it is a direct connection to the database. It means that it is many times faster than type 3 driver. And also we have an advanced type 5 driver in order to connect to the database, large databases, and in case if you're developing a real-time application which interacts with the large amount of data, just like videos, images, if you're streaming, then the recommended driver is type 5. In this example, I'm going to use type 4. Of course, type 4 is also suitable for large-scale applications. Before we get into the example, do the following. First of all, to work it out with this example, make sure that you have installed MySQL server readily in your machine. It's quite easy to install the MySQL server. Just go to the official website of MySQL. There, please download the latest version of MySQL server, install it. It doesn't matter whatever the operating system it is. All the executables or binaries are available in their official website. You can download the latest version and you can install it. And I'm not going to show you how to download and how to install as part of this video. And number 2, as soon as you have downloaded MySQL server and install it, you need to download the number 2. The point number 2 is very important. MySQL connector.jar file. In this example, I am going to use the version 8.0.16. What is the importance of this one? This is nothing but the driver. All the driver information is located in this particular jar file, and this is provided by MySQL. That's why the same you can download from the MySQL official website. You have to download two things: MySQL server. Once after installing MySQL server, make sure that you also download the MySQL connector.jar file. You can use the latest versions. 8.0.2122 are also available nowadays. You can download them. But I'm using, as part of this video, I'm using the version 8.0.16. The third thing that you need to do is that once after these two things are done, then the third thing, then you need to create one sample database. To create a sample database, it's a straightforward syntax: create database name. It's quite straightforward. And you need to create one sample user and create one table and insert 1 or 2 records in it. Because using our Java program, we have to connect to the database that you have created, and we need to extract the values that you have created. For that reason, create one sample table and insert some values in it. Not more than 1 or 2 values, just for testing purpose. If you don't know how to create a database, how to create a user, then in my channel, there is JDBC, JSP, JDBC Servlet. In those videos, I have clearly demonstrated how to create a database and user, and in case if you're not sure about these things, then you can watch those videos. Once after doing the previous things, then we need to follow strictly the following 3 points. after opening the Apache Netbeans. These points are very important. In case if you miss any one of these 3 points, then you are not going to connect through Apache Netbeans. Alright, once after opening the Apache Netbeans, you need to create a new connection. Creating a new connection is dead easy. There is a direct option called as database servers. Go there, right click it and create a new connection. There you need to specify the downloaded MySQL connector.jar file. It will prompt you to specify the jar file. Please locate your jar file that is downloaded by you and give that location there. And afterwards, you need to provide username and password. The moment you have installed MySQL server, the default user is root, and make sure that you are not going to use root. That's why you need to create one user. Let's like user, some sample, demo user, anything else. Create some user. You cannot use root in Apache Netbeans. And for whatever the username that you have given, provide the password and then you please test the connection. Your test connection should be successful. Otherwise, we cannot establish the connection. The third point, under your project, you need to add one dependency. This is the most important point. And most of the people who are using NetBeans by the very first time, they struggle a lot because they don't know the third point. They need to add the dependency. There is a file called as pom.xml in which we need to make 3 entries and we need not to manually enter it. Once after clicking add dependency, it will prompt for 3 things. I'll show you what are the 3 things that have to be provided. I'll show you in NetBeans. Okay, so simple. Now it's time to write a simple Java program, JDBC program. Before I write, let us imagine that there is a database called as test and there is a table called as sample with 2 records. Sample is a table. In my case, in the example that I am going to show you, sample is a table which is located in a database called as test. And the username is my name itself, Satish, and the password is hello world that I am using. I've created a sample 2 records and I'll access those 2 records using this program. To write JDBC program, we need to follow strictly these 4 steps. The very first step is to register a driver. I told you that JDBC program requires a driver. In order to register a driver, we need to use a function called as class.forName, which takes the parameter of the driver name. In case if you are using MySQL, there is a separate name for this driver name. And in the same way, in case if you are using Oracle, Oracle has its own separate name. So whatever the name that I am going to use as part of MySQL, I am going to show you in the program. The next thing that you need to create a connection using a function called as getConnection, which takes 3 parameters: URL of the database, name, that means username of your database, password of the database. Okay. And to create the getConnection, we'll be using a static class called as driver manager. It means that I'll be using this getConnection method using this class like driver manager.getConnection. The third point is to create a statement. We can create a statement using a connection object. We can create a simple statement here. We can also create an advanced statements like prepared statement, callable statements. Other versions of statements are also there that we'll see later. But as part of this simple example, I'm using a simple statement. To create a statement object, I'll be using a connection object that is created in step 2. The fourth point is to execute your SQL queries. Now you are allowed to do whatever you want. Do you want to execute insert statement? Do it. Do you want to create a table? Do it. Do you want to update the existing database? Do it. Everything that you could do using your program by executing a query called as a function called as execute query. Inside that you can pass an SQL query as in the way you want. Whatever the query that you want, you tell, automatically we can execute. What are the steps? Come on first. You need to register the driver. You need to create a connection using getConnection method, and you need to create a statement. Using this statement, we are allowed to execute the queries. Alright, so these 4 things that I am going to demonstrate now. First of all, I'll show you the program, the first point. The second point, once after showing the program, I'll open the Apache Netbeans and I'll create a DB connection for you. The third point, I'll add the dependency in NetBeans. There I told you that there are 3 things that we need to enter as part of dependency. Once after doing that, we'll execute the program. There we'll finish the lesson. This is the program that I wanted to show you. Everything that we are going to use as part of SQL. That means there is a function called as execute query, and there is an object called as statement that we create using a statement class, and we are going to create a connection using getConnection. All these are available in a package called as java.sql. For that reason, this is very important to import it. And any additional packages that you want as part of your application logic, you can do it. But since it is a very simple program, I am not using any additional packages. Of course, the default package java.lang is already imported as part of this program. Now, I need to create a connection. To create a connection, I know that there are 3 parameters I need to pass. One is the database URL. For that reason, I have created a string called as db URL. This is the name of the string. The name could be anything, but the value is very, very important. Here, the value JDBC-MySQL. It's an important statement that has to be preceded. And then, since we are running the database in our local machine itself, the local host is given. Otherwise, if you are at some country and if your database is another country, then you need to specify the IP address of your database. And here is the name of the database. Other 2 arguments are username, the username, and password. That these 2 parameters have to be used. These 3 parameters will be used in getConnection function. Before that, the main function started. Here, I created a connection object using a connection class, and I created a statement object using statement class. Initialize to null, because there's nothing initialized now. We are going to initialize in very short. Here onwards, what are the steps that I told for JDBC program will enter? First of all, we need to register the driver using class.forName. This is a name for the driver, MySQL driver, and the name should be as it is and case sensitive. com.mysql.cj.jdbc.driver. You have to remember this thing in case if you are developing applications using MySQL connector.jar file. And before, the connectors version was 8, and here there was a different name, but here onwards the name will be com.mysql.cj.jdbc.driver. Please remember this line. It's very, very important. This argument. There's no other alternative. We have to remember it. Step 2, we are going to create a connection. To create a connection, we'll be using an object called as con. I already told you that I'll be using static class called as driver manager. Dot, the function name is getConnection, which takes 3 parameters, URL, username, and password, which was taken as part of our variables. Now, you could also give directly these values, but the line looks very bigger, that's why I have taken variables. And then we need to create a statement. To create a statement, I already told you, we will be using a connection object. Using the connection object that we have created in step 2, using that object we will be creating a statement. To create a statement, a simple function create statement will be used. Now here the statement object is initiated. Finally, using this statement we can execute the queries. What is the query that I wanted to execute is select star from sample. Sample is the table that I have already created in my MySQL database. A sample table has one single row with 2 records only. Okay, so SQL here is a string in which I am placing this value, select star from sample. SQL is a string that we have created here and in which we are placing this value. The value is nothing but SQL query. Right now, the very important point, in case if you are extracting something from your MySQL, the data comes from your database server, right? So you need a variable, a memory location in which those results have to be stored. That memory location you can create using a class called as result set. This is the result set object, RS. The name could be anything, but in order to create this object, we need to use a class called as result set. This is also part of java.sql package. Using this statement, now we can execute our query. The function name you can observe here, execute query. SQL means it is a variable name in which we have stored already our query. Select star from sample. Without writing a variable name here, you can also directly write your query, whatever the query that you wanted to execute. And RS is an object which gets multiple records. So in table, there could be any number of records, right? Like 1 or 2. In my case, I have only 2 records. And in your case, maybe like 10 records or 20 records, whatever they are. We need to extract record by record using a loop. Because all together we cannot show, right? I think you might be knowing that we need to use a loop here. Inside loop, there is a function rs.next will tell whether the next record is available or not. Sometimes if your table do not have any records, there the execution has to stop. If you have 2 records, there won't be any third record. At that particular point of time, your loop has to end. So the condition to end the loop is rs.next. In case if there is next record available, then only we can enter and we'll extract. To extract, we have a function called as rs.getInt. We being developers, we know what kind of data are present in the table. In my case, sample is the table in which I have a serial number, S number as a column name. You need to provide that name, the column name. This particular column name has whatever values. The first value will be stored in this particular variable. I've used integer because being a developer who developed this particular program, I know I'm pretty much sure that serial number is integer. That's why I've taken integer. In case you can also extract strings in case if you have stored some names. And finally, I'm showing just, I'm printing that ID, whatever the value that I have extracted. So in case sample table has 2 records, Those two records will be stored in a result set using while loop line by line. That means first record will be stored, the first value is stored here in the ID, and the first value will be displayed. Since it had the second record, again I'll get back to the loop and the second record will be displayed. Finally, we need to close the result set, we need to close the statement, and we need to close the connection. This is very, very important. We need to catch two exceptions, SQL exception, because if you are trying to extract the data from the table which is not existing. Sample is a table that is already available. In case if I given by mistake sample as demo or which is not existing object, then that is an SQL error. To throw those errors, you need to catch those SQL exceptions. Very, very important. And in case if you do not catch those, then obviously your JDBC program will throw you a warning saying that SQL exception is not caught. And also class not found exceptions or any exceptions that are related to general exceptions that are related to your application. If you want to catch, then this block has to be used. And finally, I printed. In case if I come to this particular line, it means that I have already used my connection and it's time to say goodbye to the connection. We'll open the Apache Netbeans and we'll see the things whatever I've demonstrated. Let's follow. We create a database connection. This is the Apache Netbeans. I have readily opened, and here you can see services. Go to the services. The first option itself, there is a option called as databases. Right click on it. By the very first time you are doing, you need to create new connection. Say new connection. You need to create a connection. Here you can select any kind of database that you want, Oracle, PostgreSQL, or IBM DB2, whatever the thing that you wanted to do it, you can do it. We have already downloaded one jar file, right? So we need to select the new one and add the jar file. Whatever the jar file that you have downloaded, select the location and say OK. In my case, I have already done, so I am not repeating those steps, okay? Because I have already selected this jar file. And afterwards, after selecting the jar file, you can see the version here. 8.0.16 is the jar file that I have downloaded. In your case, it could be 8.0.21 or 22, which are available right now. Next, here you need to provide the username. Whatever the user that you have created, you need to provide. Make sure that you should not use root user, because root user is highly privileged user to monitor the database. Generally, root user will not be used through application interfaces like NetBeans or Eclipse. It's not recommended. Root users are used to administer the production database. High responsibility is there for this particular user. That's why it is restricted to use root user. Make sure that you have created a username, separate username and password before you do it. And after providing the username and password that you have created, for an example, let the username be Satish or whatever the username that you have created, provide the password and say test connection. And once if you say test connection, you should see successful. The test is successful. That's all. It means that if you have done whatever I said so far correctly, then you will be seeing the test is successful. And say OK, that's all. Say finish, that's all. It means that your database is right, is now available. Whenever you press this option database, for an example, I'll show here. Generally, it looks like this, and whenever you press this one, and this is the one you have added. 3306 is a default port number for MySQL. In this particular database, I have following things. The test is the database I have already created, in which I have a table called as sample. And you can also run some SQLs if you want. Please right click on the connection and say execute command. And here you can test whatever the tables that you have inside the database, and you don't have to go outside of NetBeans to check the tables. Everything you can do it here. It means that you can directly write the SQL statements. Let me use the database test, because the test is the database that I have created. I'm selecting this one and I'm running the selection. Run selection. So test is being selected now. Inside test there is a table called as sample. Let me test the records. Select star from sample. Let me run this selection. And here you can see inside sample table, there is only one single call as serial number, and there are two values 111 and 222. I'm going to access these two values. Now we have made a connection. Through this connection, we are able to see these values, but these values have to be extracted using Java program. This is ultimate goal. Okay, right now, go to the projects. Hopefully you should have already created one web project or simple Java application project in your NetBeans. The last point that you need to do it is that you need to add a dependency. There is, for every project, there is an option called as dependency. Right click on dependency and say add dependency. When you say add dependency, you need to provide the following things. Group ID is MySQL and artifact is also a value that is available with respect to MySQL. What is that value? I'm going to show you very short. And the version, what is the version that I'm using? 8.0.16, and in case if you are using a different version, please provide the appropriate version. It will check with the jar file that you have kept, because more than one jar files also you can include, and to tell to this particular project, demo project, which version of jar file has to be used. That's why these entries are very important. For every project there will be a file called as pom.xml. Upon giving these three values, pom.xml file will be updated. Now I will open this pom.xml. POM stands for project object module, and here whatever the dependency values that you have given will be updated automatically. Here I'll show you the dependency that we have taken into the account. Here you see these are the three values that we need to provide. MySQL is the value, that means group ID is MySQL, and I said artifact ID means this is the name that starts with the driver. MySQL -connector -java, and the version, whatever the version that you are using, these values you need to provide. You don't have to provide these values directly inside pom.xml. It's not recommended to open this file and change the values and add any element. Whenever you wanted to add any dependency, Java dependency or general dependencies, you need to press on the top particular option and say add dependency. Through this way only you need to give. So what are the values that I have shown has to be given from this way. Whenever you say add, automatically those values will be updated in .xml file. Everything you need to do with an interface. Right, once after adding dependency, our job is done. Now we can execute the program. Our program is readily available. What is the program that I have shown you? I'm going to execute the same program here. Upon executing this program, I'm going to execute a query called as select star from sample is a table, from where I'm going to extract two values, 111 and 222. Those values have to be shown as part of a console output screen. Okay, right. Let's do it now. Right click on MySQL demo.java file, run file. If everything is done correctly, then we should see these values are extracted by our Java program. The beauty is that we have connected to the MySQL database, and your program has connected to the database that you have created called as test. Inside test, it has accessed a table called as sample. Inside sample, it has kept two values in the result set. By using system.out.println, these two values are printed and shown for us. That's all, guys. It is possible for us to host and upload many demanding courses on this YouTube channel, only if you support us by subscribing. Please subscribe, switch on the notification bell, stay connected, and enjoy learning.